Hello and welcome to Thoughts from the Movies.
Hello.
What's
What's going on, guys?
Not much. We're just kind of trying out some new stuff today. As you can see, Justin and I have mics, and if you're a Thoughts from the Bench regular, you can probably guess that we're in the same room.
Hey, WD-40 here.
Oh my god.
Slowly rising up during the show. That's all right.
So if this goes kind of smoothly, hopefully we can convince Austin to come into the big bad city to record in person. But
Wouldn't be a bad idea.
Today's movie was Justin's pick: Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Dun dun dun.
Justin, why the hell did we watch this movie?
Why indeed? Scott Pilgrim is actually a very interesting movie. So there's a lot of reasons why I kind of came around to this one after debating between a few. First of all, it's the 10-year anniversary. This year. It was released in 2010.
Okay.
They were actually going to do a whole big thing in theaters of putting it back in theaters, but because of COVID, they couldn't. But so it's a 10-year anniversary, which is always an interesting time to go back and look at a film. You can kind of get a good sense of how it's affected the zeitgeist and sort of how it's sat with people since it came out. Edgar Wright is a fantastic filmmaker, and what's interesting is that he hasn't made a ton of films, but I think a lot of people know his stuff, and this is probably actually the least well-known of all his movies. He did the Simon Pegg trilogy with World's End, Hot Fuzz, and Shaun of the Dead, and he did Baby Driver was his last movie and his most commercially successful movie. And then he was also involved with the MCU very heavily. He wrote Ant-Man and was going to direct it at one point.
I totally forgot that.
Yeah, so and Scott Pilgrim kind of gets, I think, it kind of falls by the wayside in terms of Edgar Wright's filmography. And it's a really interesting movie. It was a box office bomb.
Yeah.
It only made $60 million off a $48 million budget. But it's very stylish. It's very well made. It's fantastic. The cast is amazing. There's a lot of people in it that you don't realize have gone on to have really great careers, which we'll get into a little bit. So just a lot of interesting things about it as a whole. And I hadn't seen it since it came out 10 years ago, so it felt like a good time to revisit it. So as usual, boys, tell me about your Edgar Wright. Are you familiar with his movies? Have you seen his stuff? Do you know who he is? Have you seen this movie before?
Austin?
I know that I knew that he was involved in Shaun of the Dead and was the writer of Ant-Man. Other than that, I haven't really seen his name around. I'm assumed that my younger self didn't pay too much attention to the people that were involved in the movies, more of the movies themselves. So, like you said, very interesting. I think this movie has a definite cult following.
Yes.
I'll say that.
So, Austin, you never saw the Shaun of the Dead series?
No, I only saw. I think the only Shaun of the Dead I saw was like the original. I think that's the only one.
No. Shaun of the Dead, like with Simon Pegg.
Yeah, it's the spoof comedy, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you never saw Hot Fuzz?
I had heard of Hot Fuzz. I had never seen it.
Okay, and you never seen World's End?
They're like pub hopping, I think.
Yeah, they're trying to get through all the pubs. Like, it's like, the world's gonna end, and they're like, well, let's go on one last pub crawl, and, like, the apocalypse is happening as they go between pubs.
Okay, yeah, so maybe I have seen that one.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
And then, Josh, what was your experience? You've seen this movie. Okay.
Edgar Wright was Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and all that. Right. I had no idea he did Scott Pilgrim.
I think he did this. He did Shaun of the Dead, and then he started writing this, but it took a long time in development, and he came back to it later. But I think it was his third or fourth movie, maybe.
Okay. I mean, I said to Justin when he walked in, I said, this movie always makes me reevaluate my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Because it keeps crawling up that list every time I see it. And the older it gets, like, what if I told you guys there's a movie starring Chris Evans, Brie Larson, Michael Cera, Bill Hader, Anna Kendrick, Aubrey Plaza, and Jason Schwartzman, with a supporting cast of Nelson Franklin, Maya Whitman, Brandon Roth, Kieran Culkin, Allison Pill, and Ellen Wong.
Yeah.
you would
crazy,
be like,
right?
that's a blockbuster. That's
Yeah.
like probably the most expensive movie ever made.
Yep.
Nope.
It's crazy. I mean, when you think about it, where a lot of those people's career ended up being.
Oh, man,
And
so many of them.
seeing how young they are in this one, and before all the Marvel movies and everything. So it was mostly up and comers at the time.
Yeah.
Except for Michael Cera and.
Well, and like all the people I just named, none of them are Ramona Flowers. Because she did nothing.
Exactly.
Right.
She was a nobody after this movie, which is even crazier.
Oh, she
because
wasn't a
she's
nobody.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Elizabeth Mary Winstead. I know she did. She was in Fargo, one of the seasons of Fargo. I think season 3. But yeah, she was always more of sort of the indie darling.
Yeah,
for sure.
that was kind of just like So yeah, I mean Edgar Wright's work to me, I think is. I wouldn't say it's as important to me as like a Tarantino or I don't know, whoever did like the Austin Powers movies or something like that. But Shaun of the Dead, when we were kids, was huge.
Right.
And Austin, I'm really surprised that didn't stick with you as much because like you're my brother's age and he swears by that trilogy. He would tell you it's the best 3 movies ever made.
Yeah, honestly I stumbled across Shaun of the Dead because I thought, in my younger self that it was like a sequel to Dawn of the Dead, and I just got something a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I needed.
Yeah, a little different. Different, that one.
As far as like I said, I never realized that I never put them together, that it was almost like a trilogy kind of thing. Maybe I should have, but again, this is a lot younger Moorhead that wasn't as intelligent of movies and understanding, more of just seeing them. So.
Understandable. So, like, Justin, why is this movie important? Like, why is this worth us watching on Thoughts from the Movies?
Sure. Well, apart from the awesome cast you mentioned, and Edgar Wright is a filmmaker who, as we talked about already, has done a lot of great work. What's really cool about this movie is all of the visual effects. It's an incredibly stylish movie, and they incorporate them in such a way that really, I don't know if it had been done before, and it's been rarely done since. It's kind of a cross between a comic book movie and a video game movie. There's a ton of pop culture in it if you're into media. It's like Ready Player One 10 years ago.
Have you ever heard of Pac-Man? It was originally used to be Puck-Man, but they were afraid that they would scratch out the P and write, an F or something.
Yeah, how many times have we heard that in the movie? But those kind of gems, it was not only full of pop culture, but the way that the movie was presented in terms of incorporating graphics and sound effects and all these different things, being faithful to the comics. Which, had you ever read the comics, Austin?
No.
I guess you haven't, because I didn't know. I don't even know if I knew it was a comic book.
I knew that it was a comic book, but I never got my hands on it. Austin, did you have any idea?
No. Honestly, when this came out, I was about 15, and I had seen the trailer, and a thought popped into my head and said, who the hell would see this movie? The plot did not, it didn't serenade with me at the time.
That's crazy.
And I thought, you know what, it's a PG-13 movie, I'm 15, this isn't PG-13 movies weren't that great, especially in the 2010s, they weren't. So I used just that as a crutch to lean off of and didn't see it, and maybe I should have, because I thought this was, while as not as great, I thought it was very creative.
I remember the trailer. I remember
Sure.
being excited to go see it in theaters. I took Jeremiah on opening night. We were pumped.
I remember when it came out. I remember the trailer, and the people just didn't turn out for it, which is, I think, part of what Austin said. Kind of hard to market and sort of a very not niche, but sort of targeted towards a very specific audience.
It was
not
10
the
years
broadest.
ahead of its time.
Yes,
Or 5 years ahead of its time.
I think ahead of its time is a good way to describe it for sure. Especially after seeing movies that have come out since then. But
Yeah, exactly.
Right. When did Zombieland come out?
Oh God, probably is that?
I think that was the year before this, actually, 2009,
2009.
and this was 2010. Yeah.
So that's kind of crazy because Zombieland is a very similar movie in that sense where you can look at Zombieland and be like, oh yeah, that's exactly. So basically what it is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take the echo out of our headphones. So what it is it's people before they got big, right? Emma Stone before she got big. Jesse Eisenberg was kind of already on the map, but not 100% yet. And then who plays Emma Stone's younger?
Abigail Breslin.
Right, who gets kind of big. You knew who...
Woody Harrelson.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who Woody Harrelson was, but you didn't know Woody Harrelson like 2020 Woody Harrelson.
Right.
I mean, it was really like a coming out party for a lot of people,
Sure.
and an amazing guest appearance by Bill Murray.
Yes.
Which is kind of like how this movie feels, where it's like, oh, Bill Hader's not actually physically in it; he's just
Right.
the voice of it the whole time. You're like, oh, that's cool.
I didn't catch that until I read that afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, very similar. And then all those people went on to have really big careers. It reminded me a lot of when I was watching it stylistically, how a lot of the framing of the shots, a lot of the transitions and the graphics they used. It actually kind of reminded me a lot of Sin City in some of its shot choices and the use of lighting and things like that. The very high contrast, like certain comic books do. In the way that they would look down at certain angles when he's walking with Ramona, or things like that. I know this wasn't Frank Miller, but it definitely had that sort of comic book vibe to me, even though I didn't read the comic books at all. So, but you guys, Josh, you in particular, I know had to have been into all the video game stuff.
Loved
I know all the Zelda references are throughout the movie, and all the music. I guess you guys both probably dug a lot of the different types of music they used, and the local bands from Toronto and things like that. So, was either of those elements to you guys more interesting, the comic book stuff or the video game stuff, or the music, or what stood out to you the most? Because it's a very rich movie. There's so much to take from it.
Austin?
A lot of it had to do with the music, definitely, and the video game aspects of just generating it. Fight scenes that literally turned people into coins, I thought was funny as hell.
Yeah.
I'd also argue when we were talking about if it was splitting into two, like a comic book and a video game, I'd also argue that's a triple where it's kung fu, because there's a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get a lot of Mortal Kombat, in a funnier sense, obviously, not finish him, but a lot of Mortal Kombat vibes, a lot of kung fu movie, Kill Bill vibes, obviously from this. It's great. I should have watched this 10 years ago, man. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, so the old school arcade game people and the early video game system people are going to hear a lot of noises that sound very familiar to them. A lot of Zelda, Metal Gear Solid, Pac-Man, obviously, Sonic, Mario, even the reference to Scott Pilgrim getting the one extra life. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in there. And every time I watch this movie, I pick out a new sound that I didn't hear the first time. And the one sound that is missing, though, is the when Link opens the treasure chest, the da-na-na-na sound would have been awesome. But it's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of huge video game references. Obviously, they make a fake video game that's some weird balance between Mortal Kombat and Dance Dance Revolution, which is super cool. And obviously, the characters are meant to be very reflective of certain superheroes and that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it is before the Marvel movies happened.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest wink to that culture, what used to be considered nerd culture, which is now just pop culture.
Right. Yeah.
That movie was one of the first big winks to it, almost as much as War Game in 1980, if you're familiar with that movie.
Nice throwback.
Yeah. I mean, it really was it feels like Stranger Things would feel right now to somebody in their 20s.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'd argue that. Yeah, I get that.
So take us through the plot here, Josh, for those who don't know it, and you being the expert.
So Scott Pilgrim is a loser who
The end.
is in a shitty local band, and he's dating a high school senior as a 22-year-old. We all know that guy.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do.
And He does not mean to be a predator or mean to be harmful. He's just kind of lost in his ways, has no self-confidence and whatever. So we kind of meet Scott, hanging out with his high school girlfriend. The opening scene in the movie is awesome, where we meet the band members and they're like kind of picking on him about his new girlfriend. They find out that she's 17 and that's really weird and all that kind of stuff. So that's all like how we meet Scott. We kind of get like the introduction to his life, that he lives with his gay roommate.
Played by the fantastic Kieran Culkin, the
Yes.
scene-stealing Kieran Culkin.
Yes.
Hilarious.
And really, Kieran Culkin's career was all before Scott Pilgrim, and then nothing after it, really.
He's on Succession right now, I think, or is that
Maybe.
Rory Culkin? I can't remember which Culkin is which. I think Kieran Culkin is on a successful show right now, and I don't know if it's Succession or if it's Rory Culkin that's on that show.
I should have put my
No, it's
keyboard
Kieran
in front of me.
Culkin.
Is that Kieran in that show?
Yeah, he plays Roman Roy. Yep.
Roman Roy. Yeah, and Succession, which is on FX, it's in the second season, is one of probably the hottest show on TV right now as far as dramas go. Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
So,
yeah, I mean, he's
but
brilliant.
between now and then, in the last 10 years, I don't know if he's done a
Right.
ton of stuff. So yeah, as sort of a child actor, I guess.
Yeah, as just a smart ass, one-lining gay person, basically. And really, I think we get the first taste of this script being written in 2010 with some of the jokes, because they did not necessarily age appropriately.
Right.
Whether or not they're funny, I'll let you decide as fans. But yeah, definitely an awesome back and forth between them. And then eventually Scott Pilgrim finds out about this girl. He dreams about her. Her name's Ramona or something, and that she's skating by. Ends up meeting her at a party, yada, yada, yada. And that's when the plot really kicks in. Scott Pilgrim gets an email from one of the seven evil exes, the League of Seven Evil Exes, explaining exactly what's going to happen through the movie, and in true loser fashion, Scott Pilgrim skims it. And what ends up happening is, in the first battle of the bands that his band is playing in, this superhuman shows up and attempts to beat up Scott Pilgrim to prevent him from dating Ramona Flowers.
Mm-hmm. Except he just doesn't show up for a street fight.
No.
He shows up for a very stylish and hyper-realistic Bollywood fight dance competition, weird Mortal Kombat slash... I don't even know how to describe it really, but it's all these different things, and it's like a video game. It's like a versus Scott
Absolutely.
versus this guy who flies in, all these streaks of color and flashes of light and all these different elements to it, and it's just very big. There's all these special effects throughout their fight sequence, and there's like ghost Indian dancers that he's fighting to, and they full on battle each other, and he defeats him like you would in a video game.
Yes.
And then he has to do that with the other 7 X's to... I guess, to date Ramona, right? Is that...
So, essentially, the 7Xs are set up as a league to prevent anyone from dating Ramona, so that Gideon can continue to control her, because she's technically has like a chip in the back of her head that prevents her from dating anybody, and she's constantly still obsessed with Gideon. She's basically been running from his possession and his control.
Gotcha.
Which is cool. Also creepy.
I think we just lost half the
There's a lot
people
of-
that are watching.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, she's got a chip
lot
and is
of
being controlled by her boyfriend?
Ex-boyfriend.
Click. Ex-boyfriend.
Ex-boyfriend.
Yeah. I'm done.
Who's also the biggest record label in this fictitious world, he's going to sign Scott's band in an attempt to keep him from dating Ramona. It blows up pretty quickly. But we're at the first action fight sequence, so let's talk about it, because it's like no other action fight sequence to that point.
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we just did The Matrix a couple weeks ago. And
Right.
It's interesting to compare sort of the effects of that movie and, like Austin was saying, the martial arts impacts on the fight scenes and the hyper-realistic element to it, and then see this one. But this one was just even more stylized. Like, it's very unique among anything that I can think of. But it catches you by surprise because they're in the middle of this playing a show. Mm-hmm. The guy comes in and they just go full on video game on each other for a good couple minutes. And yeah, it's totally unique and unexpected, which is part of why it's so fun. Because until then, like, what had we seen of the comic book-ness? Like, we had seen some graphics on screen and, you know, a little bit of interesting transitions.
I think it's the way it's edited.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, it's a wide shot.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah! And then close-up panels of things, right? So you'll see, like if the bookcase is Scott, right? And I'm his roommate, right? That's like the juxtaposition of every shot, right? Where he's like over his shoulder and he like just kind of does like the piccolo turn to it, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's all of that. The framing, the editing is very. It looks like they used the comic book as the storyboard. Is really what it looks like.
I would agree. Not having seen the comics, but I think just the way it looked, it felt like they were just kind of doing shot for shot.
Yeah, they really are. Which is awesome. And also, I think we get, like, through this point, what we're really getting is the taste of Edgar Wright's writing, because he helped write the screenplay. Mm-hmm. He helped write the screenplay for the Simon Pegg trilogy. Mm-hmm. And really, it's the when Scott's introducing his girlfriend to the band, and young Neil is just sitting in the corner, and he's like, "That's young Neil," and he goes, "I'm Neil." That's it. That's Edgar Wright at his core. Like, that's the best of it all.
And you should mention whenever they introduce a character, it's cool. They do like the name, the age, and like stats underneath it, like you would sort of see in a video game. Not quite as opulent as like Jumanji, the recent Jumanji did, but it still has like a little quick few stats about the person.
But they don't make the Jumanji video game rock spinoff without Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Ready Player One. I don't know that Wreck-It Ralph. Like all of these now huge blockbuster movies that made all this money. Unless they saw Scott Pilgrim versus the World do it, I don't know that they have the guts to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can argue it's almost a stepping stone.
It is.
To come.
And how much, Austin, do you think it's a stepping stone for them to try to do the live-action Pokemon and Sonic movies, too?
Yeah, no, honestly, like, all of it comes into play with this. Like, it's rolling the dice on a concept, like, that has never happened, and using that, and I totally agree, like, putting this movie with, which essentially you said, shot for shot, what would look like for a comic book, I think is genius.
Yeah. Because
of course, maybe not everyone's going to get it, but those ones that do get it are going to love the shit out of this movie. Like, absolutely.
And I think that's exactly right, Austin, and that goes back to every time I watch this movie, it crawls up that list just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So as the relationship between Ramona and Scott blossoms, we start to meet all the different evil exes. My favorite evil ex, played by Chris Evans, who is an action movie star.
Yeah. Chris Evans in the movie talks like this.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah. We get a great back and forth between I can't remember Culkin's character's name.
Wallace, I think.
Wallace, yes. Yeah, between right, Wallace and Chris Evans, where Wallace goes, "I'm a big fan," and Chris Evans goes, "Why wouldn't you be?"
Yeah.
It's just incredible. That's Edgar Wright writing.
Yeah.
He's the one that puts that comedic timing in there.
It's so funny, though, with Chris Evans' character, because this movie came out in 2010, which is the year the first Iron Man came out in 2008. Avengers would be in 2012, and I think 2010 is when the first Captain America came out, if my memory serves me correctly. In between,
it's literally his next movie.
Yeah,
he does Scott Pilgrim and then Captain America.
So yeah, but this is before that happened, right? So and this was Chris Evans back when he was still kind of playing those like douchey frat guys that he was in Fantastic Four and on another teen movie and all that stuff. But it's just crazy to see how big a star he's become, and to go back and like this is him before it.
He's one of the Chris's.
Yeah.
Like, literally, he's one of the four Chris's, right? Which is awesome, too, I think, is partially, not to get off on the Chris's tangent, but that's one of my favorite topics right now.
Oh, boy.
Like, 2 or 3 of the 4 Chris's started from humble beginnings. Chris Evans and Chris Pratt being the prime examples. Mm-hmm. Chris Pratt was a fat guy on Parks and Rec who was supposed to be a 1 or 2 episode arc character.
Right.
Stole every scene he was in, and now is one of the most lovable TV characters of all time in Andy Dwyer, right? And his fictitious wife, Aubrey Plaza, who's basically my wife does an impersonation of year round. She knows. But that's like, you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
they came from humble beginnings, like, and that's what I will always love Chris Evans, because I'm like, there he is. There he is, being one of the second 7 exes, not
Sure.
boyfriends, exes, in Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and killing it while doing it.
Yeah.
So as we kind of go through, who's your favorite ex that we encounter?
Well, let's list them off real quick, because
Okay.
we have the first guy is Matthew Patel.
Yep.
And he's kind of like got the Bollywood-themed dance fight sequence. And the second guy is Chris Evans, who plays an actor, like a big action actor, and Scott Pilgrim has to fight him and his stunt doubles.
Yep.
Number 3 is the bassist from his ex Brie Larson's band.
Yes.
Who's a vegan and has supernatural powers, and eventually gets taken down by the vegan police, which is a whole freaking other thing. Who's number 4? Is that the girl?
That's the girl, Roxy something.
Roxy.
Yeah.
I wonder how much. Oh no, they do have Todd Ingram listed beforehand on like the actual website here. Because Roxy tries to fight him before Todd, and he won't do it.
Yeah, like Roxy attacks Scott Pilgrim in the alleyway, and he's like, "Get away from me! I don't want to do this."
Yeah, and really just I got to look at her name real quick. Maya Whitman, like sneaky good, and
Yeah,
she's
spunky.
she's in New Girls. Shit.
Just girls? She's not a new girl.
No. Hang on.
I know her as the voice of Katara from Avatar.
Shut up.
Oh yeah.
Really? No way.
Oh yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Austin, they're gonna revoke our nerd cards, bud.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Where's Maya?
She did. She was in a movie called The Duff, which was a teen comedy that came out in like 2012 or so. But she hadn't done a ton.
No.
Outside of Avatar.
She's one of the leads in Where is this? Come on.
She's in Perks of Being a Wallflower. Yeah.
Why?
She does a lot of voice work. She has a very distinguishable voice.
I'm very concerned that IMDb no longer shows television.
No, it just goes by the year, so it depends.
Yeah, but that's what I'm telling you is like right now. Good Girls. There it is.
Okay, Good Girl.
She's one of the leads in Good Girls.
I don't know what that is.
With Christina Hendricks and Don Amigo from Parks and Rec.
Oh, okay.
And she steals every scene she's in that one
Nice.
too, because it's that same spunky, sassy character. So we have Roxy.
She's number 4, yeah, the girlfriend.
Then the Kyochi twins?
Yes.
Katayanagi twins.
Yeah.
Who are like Asian DJ twins.
Yes.
Who don't speak anything.
And then Gideon is the last one.
Played by Jason Schwartzman. The indelible Jason Schwartzman, who I just like. There's something about him in every movie I see that like I want to hate him just because he's got like such a annoying. I don't know
It's
what
the
it
mole.
is. It's either
It's
the
the
mole
mole.
or the voice or like just his like pretentiousness. Every character he plays is really fucking pretentious, but he's just so good in all his stuff. Like I can't dislike him as much as I want to.
Kind of like how I hate Tom Hanks.
I don't even know where to begin with that statement. What? Nobody hates Tom Hanks. He's
I
going to
hate
save
Tom
the world
Hanks.
from coronavirus.
No, I don't care. I hate Tom
Oh
Hanks.
my god. A curse upon all your
Austin,
houses.
who was your favorite ex?
Man, I want to say, I think it was Todd. Just because
Todd
The vegan?
yeah, just the premise of putting on the face of many to here's what a vegan person is. It's like, I'm better than you in every single way because I don't do this and because then I'm going to have psychic powers.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so funny. And then just to trick him into drinking half and half and then the vegan police showing, it's a great scene.
Yeah, the vegan police. Yeah.
Honestly makes it. I kind of would have thought he would have been later, though, with him being his ex's current boyfriend. I kind of thought that would have made him a little bit further down the line, but it's fine where he is, I guess.
And again, I think it's they were flipped.
Yeah, I think so.
I think he was supposed to fight Roxy first, didn't, and then
And that's Brandon Routh who plays that guy, which,
Is
as
a
people
huge
know, was Superman in the rather not well-received version before Justice League.
He was that, and he plays Ray Palmer as in Legend of Tomorrow as the Atom, I believe.
Wait, so he plays another DC character in TV?
Yeah, it's really funny in the Crisis Infinite Worlds. They have him play both that guy and the Superman. It's so funny.
Okay.
I like that.
Interesting. I guess that'll save you on the cast budget.
So that's a weird little fact, like trivia thing, that this movie has two people in it that play two different characters in the same cinematic universe.
When you say it like that, yeah, that's true, because Chris Evans did Fantastic Four and Captain America, and you have this guy doing two of the DC world.
And then here's my fun little trivia thing. There's also somebody that plays two different characters in the same universe. Do you know who he is? I'll give you a hint. He is at the party when Scott Pilgrim meets Ramona Flowers.
Is it the guy that knows everybody?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Nelson Franklin is the only person to play two characters on The Office.
Yeah, he plays Nick the IT guy.
Yep, and then he's the recruiter for
Pam's Art School.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also, Robbie from New Girl.
Robbie from New Girl.
Robbie!
And, Robbie! Great guy, Robbie!
Yeah.
And he's also in Mad Men.
I think he's in a lot of TV. Just as like a couple episode arc for guest spots, because he's very funny. He's got a very distinct look and voice, and he just plays that character so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yeah. Very interesting. I mean, the cast to me, like we've been talking about, is definitely the most interesting element of this whole movie. I think just because of everyone that's linked to it in some way.
Austin, do you agree with that?
Yeah, linked to it some way. There's a lot, like, in a link to some way, talk about the amount of people that went on to play superheroes in this movie.
True.
Like, Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. You got Chris Evans as Captain America. You have, I'm drawing a blank. Crap.
Brandon Routh, like we just mentioned, as Superman.
Yep.
Correct, yes. And him as, the Atom. It's so crazy how you take an element like this and put it in like a superhero comic book kung fu style, only for them to transition to one of those styles later in their careers. I think it's brilliant. I think it's fantastic.
I would agree that in 2020, that's the most interesting thing about this movie, but I don't know how much I agree with it overall.
What, the superhero thing or the casting?
The casting.
Both? Okay.
And here's why. This movie, the way they shot their action sequences and the use of graphics still hold up.
Yeah.
Like, there still aren't action scenes shot that way.
Sure.
And there still aren't that many movies that incorporate graphics that seamlessly, right? The only one that comes to the top of my mind is Zombieland. Where the graphics are part of the storytelling and they only enhance it, they don't take away from it.
Right, yeah.
Well, the graphics in this one are also, a lot of them are sound effects.
Yes.
Which is onomatopoeia, where you're seeing the word that is a sound. And
like the D chord when they play the bass, my favorite
or like
part.
when the doorbell rings and ding dong comes on screen, or bring for a telephone or whatever. Like those words show up on screen to coincide with the sounds, which gives it that comic book feel. Because I think that's when you see it the most, is like a thwack or a bop or like whatever in comic books. When you have an action, you see it as well. Which, like Zombieland, if you look at the text in that movie, those are all like rules that he's following, but it's actual like words and sentences. These are sound effects, which is so interesting. And I totally, like you said, totally unique. Yeah. Austin?
Yeah, almost like the old Adam West Batman cartoon.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Cartoon live show. I got to think they must have brought something from that into this, because, like you said, you had the words. That every scene where they fought was you saw the pow, boom, like something. Like.
Well, I think that's just a comic book person thing, right? Because when you read comic books growing up, the POW is naturally part of it because you need to put sound into a comic book. There's no way to tell the viewer to hear something unless you show it to them. And famously, Kevin Smith, because it's a comic book movie, we have to talk about Kevin Smith.
Naturally.
He wrote a character for his Batman series called Onomatopoeia, who's a bad guy who makes nothing but onomatopoeia sounds. He doesn't talk. He just makes like physical sounds, right? Wow. And the famous scene or the famous frame is onomatopoeia has his finger gun to somebody's head and he goes bang, and that kills them. Like
that's awesome. Yeah,
absolutely,
that's killer.
He's the character's introduced by there's like. He comes crashing through. He's like a symbiote. He comes crashing through and like falls into like a bathtub, and like the person runs upstairs, and like he's just like draped in the bathtub, and he's just going drip, drip, drip because the water from the brush pipes. Yeah, but
nice.
Yeah. I don't remember where I was going to go after this.
I don't know. We were talking about the villains.
The villains.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your favorite was number 2.
Austin's
was number 3.
Austin's and Justin, what was your favorite villain?
It's tough for me to say. I think I'm going to agree with Austin and say the vegan guy, only because having lived in Hollywood for 7 years and being surrounded by vegans 24/7, I know how many of them can be, and this was hilarious just to see him kind of embody like very similar attitude, and then just to be brought down by the vegan police is such a hilarious joke and such a fun thing to see. I'd say he was my favorite. Not my favorite character, but my favorite villain for sure. I unfortunately can't pick my future ex-wife Brie Larson because she's not technically a villain. But yeah, definitely always nice to see her in a film.
How crazy is it to see Brie Larson in this movie?
Brie Larson, what people don't realize, before Marvel, she had a very solid career of indie films that she worked with great directors and did really well-received movies that didn't do a ton of money, but like this and Short Term 12 and Spectacular Now. I mean, she was in a lot of really solid movies I don't think people realize before she went on to become part of the popular kids.
And she was actually the daughter in the television series that only had 3 runs on or 3 seasons on Showtime, The United States of Terra.
Okay.
Now,
I forgot about that show.
This show's really important because one was Brie Larson before anything, and oddly enough, like very weirdly taking a teenage Brie Larson and making her a sex symbol, which is very difficult to deal with. But then also the kid who is the main character of Atypical, which is a Netflix original series about somebody that has autism. Okay. It's making a lot of waves as being very accurate and very good for autism as far as like exposure and understanding goes.
Gotcha.
But he was the son in that. Okay. And so like two child actors that got huge launches from United States of Terra that have both gone on to do very successful things. It's pretty awesome. And then like as we go through the movie, we kind of find out a little bit more about Scott, how he's kind of conflicted and actually isn't that self-assured, and then that's partially why he's been chasing having the hottest girl on his arm and that kind of stuff. We also get a really nice moment as we kind of learn. We get a moral check. You got to roll your 20-sided die on your morality check throughout the movie a couple of times.
Yeah.
Because Scott coming to the terms that he did cheat on Knives with Ramona, and that technically means he also cheated on Ramona because she didn't know about Knives, and like all of the cool like teenage growing up lessons that are incorporated in this movie, I think is one of my favorite parts too. I'm a sucker for a good moral story. Like Scrubs is one of our favorite TV shows of all time. And part of the reason I love Scrubs is because every episode there's just that little there's that little wisdom note for you to take with you for the rest of your life. And this movie has a couple of those. Be yourself, don't let people control you, and don't be shitty to people. Like, fucking, if you don't want to be with somebody, break up with them. Don't fucking drag them along. Don't, You know what I mean? Like, there's some really cool little bits of morality in there that I think for somebody who saw it from the ages of, like, let's say 15 to 23, probably watched that movie. They were in love with it, and the message hit them deep down, which that to me is why it climbs every single time up my movie list.
It's a good reason to.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you have to have those in there in order to give movies sort of, a reason for people to connect with them, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you can just have this be a stupid comedy, but at the end of the day, it's not going to have any substance unless you throw in these lessons that make people connect with it on a deeper level. Like, oh shit, like, this whole movie's been really fun and hilarious, but yeah, like, those are some actual good points that they're making here, and like, maybe you could take something from it, or it just helps you connect with it instead of just having a very surface level comedy.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, Will Ferrell's not teaching us anything.
Yeah, like Blades of Glory, sure, it's funny, but I don't remember a freaking thing that happened in it, But
Pam
yeah,
Beasley's in that movie too.
Who?
Pam Beasley.
Is she?
Jenna Fisher's in that movie.
Nice.
Your third future ex-wife.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jenna Fisher, man.
What were some of your other favorite parts of the movie? Like, the script is pretty straightforward. He's got to beat the exes. There's cool fight scenes, and then he, dies because he loses to Gideon the first time, gets his life back, and then rescues Ramona from Gideon's control, largely with the help of knives. They do a duo thing, and then the big boss comes down, which is basically negative Scott Pilgrim, which is just Scott Pilgrim as a ghost.
Nega Scott.
Which he then just ends up making friends with him, which is, again, like a cool moral thing. It's a joke, but they're going to have brunch the next day.
Right. Yeah, you think that's going to be the final big battle. After the final big battle, and like, oh, now Scott's got to battle himself.
Yeah.
And then it's just cut to like, yeah, we'll see you tomorrow, man.
Yeah. And only in true Michael Cera fashion is that scene executed too.
Yeah.
Where it's literally Michael Cera acting with himself, and it's
Well,
I love Michael Cera.
let me ask you this, because you mentioned the script was pretty straightforward. I actually think the script is very complex, like very complicated. I mean, there's a lot of things happening here. Not only do you have the dynamics between the people, the coming of age story of it all, but you have the layer of all the different exes, and then you have all the other side characters' involvement in all those. Like, for instance, the only ex that Scott defeats by himself is the first one, and he has help on all the other ones. So it's really a very intertwined story between a lot of different people, and there's a lot of layers. Like you said, you go through all 7 of them, then he comes back with his second life and has to fight again once he's learned the lessons. So I actually think that there's a ton happening in the story, not just with the visuals, but actually like on a narrative level. Like, did you guys, Austin, did you feel like it was a very complex story, or did you feel like it was pretty straightforward and simple? Like, to me, there's a lot going on. Josh thinks it's pretty simple, but tiebreaker for us. What did you kind of take from that?
And I hate to say it, but I'm going to cut it right in the middle. I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. Okay. You could argue the plot of it is very simple, that he has to go through and fight 7 of the League of Exes in order to find and be with Ramona. But you could argue with the complexity of it, where you said that originally you normally fight the first one on your own, and then building through character, relationships, and everything else, take down the other ones. Again, goes to Josh's point of a moral compass. Like, it points in the right direction for this. And honestly, did we really think that there wasn't going to be another big boss after the original big boss? Because video games do that all the time. All the time. It pisses me off.
I definitely didn't see that coming, though, because he had to fight Gideon twice. Like, he got killed by him the first time, and then he used that extra life he had earned to come back and fight him again. So I was surprised when the Nega Scott showed up, but I guess if you're a very avid video gamer, that's not as surprising.
I would say it's surprising, but it's surprising when we see it, but when we see it, we're like, shit.
Yeah.
Like, of course.
Yeah.
It's going to be another boss.
Another brilliant moment in the writing, though, when he does earn the extra life.
Right.
The life pops up, and as Ramona's fleeing the club, he grabs it, and they go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Getting a life."
Yep. Yeah.
Just another, like, great little... This movie is littered with those one-liners, and we know how much I love a good freaking one-liner,
Sure.
like, you knocked the dye out of her hair. Like,
Yeah.
like, that's so, like, it's so good.
Yeah.
Every, I didn't know gelato wasn't vegan.
Yes.
It's milk and eggs, bitch.
That's the best line in the movie right there.
It's milk and eggs, bitch.
I was picturing that on the page as they said it. I'm
Yeah.
like, God damn, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So good.
Yeah.
There's so many of those in here that are just like,
Gems.
I love a good repeatable line that like you can throw at somebody later, and if they know, and then you're like, that's my person.
Milk and eggs, bitch.
That's milk and eggs, bitch.
Let me ask you guys this, because to me, there, not just to me, it's a fact that in this movie there are so many relationships happening at the same time with not only Scott and all of Ramona's exes, Ramona and all her exes, particularly Gideon, who's got the control chip and all that stuff. There's the Knives Chow of it all, who we actually haven't talked about at all, but is a very, very interesting character and has a great performance.
One of her best.
What was there any one of them that stood out to you guys the most in terms of, I think this is the most interesting dynamic of everyone that's in the story, whether that's Scott and Envy Adams or Anna Kendrick or whatever. Like, who did you feel was the most interesting people in the way they, their dynamic was together?
I would say if they would have built a little bit more on it, it was probably going to be Scott and, is it Evelyn? Is that the name, or is it
his ex-girlfriend Envy Adams?
That's right, Envy. Sorry.
Yeah, Brie Larson's character.
I feel like if they would have built a little bit more into the story, that probably would have been my pick, because they reference it how many times, like, throughout the film, that she's important, she's coming back, and then that's it. I think for me, it's obvious that it's the Scott and Ramona. I mean, to me, because you have an interesting dynamic between two characters that have been either wronged or have done the wronging, and now you put them together to see what kind of sparks will make, and the sparks that will make essentially aren't between them, it's between the others around them. I mean, look what happened to Knives when that happened. She went through a whole crazy transformation and shit. Tried to dye her hair, got it knocked out, then had like katana blades at the end, try to kill her. Like, it message here is that love drives people crazy, man. It really does.
With a honorable mention going to Allison Pill's performance. You're okay. Come on in. Of Allison Pill's performance as one of Scott's exes and the drummer in the band. Sex bombs. Her performance is awesome, and her relationship throughout the movie with all the characters is great. But Aubrey Plaza as the narrator, because that's really what she becomes, is she drives the story forward, and every time there's an act change, Aubrey Plaza shows up and says something, and then, in true Aubrey Plaza fashion, I'm sure she could not say lines without saying the F word, so they just decided to use the black bar and the beeping sounds.
Yeah.
Or you doing that with your mouth. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Great, another great line, right?
Yeah.
I think it's Aubrey Plaza's relationship with everybody, because she seems to know everybody, right? She knows all the characters. She knew Ramona. She knew the super ex-girlfriend. She knows all the ex-girlfriends. Like, her as the all-knowing narrator, I think, is such a cool character that is not written into enough stories, especially stories that are so laden in fiction like this, like these... I don't want to use superhero because that's so on top of it, but like Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is kind of that character.
Right.
Dumbledore is in Harry Potter. Like, that character doesn't exist enough for my taste, is the all-knowing narrator kind of person.
Yeah, it's the wise old man characters, I think what we learned in screenwriting, right? It's the one who knows everything that guides these people on their journey, and she presented here is like...
Austin's pissed. I think he took the words out of his mouth again.
Oh man! Go ahead before I say anything else. Go ahead and finish it.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I was right when we were about to say it. You said it. I'll do you one better. I don't think she's a narrator. I think she's a guide. Think about this in a term of video games. You always have that character that you keep coming back to for like more quests or more missions and everything. She's the one that points you in the right direction, whether that's an oracle, guide, like I say it that way.
Yeah.
Do they have a name for that in the video games? Like the person you always
Guide,
check in with or
Oracle.
whatever? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
And,
But it's presented in this movie like she knows everything because she has all these jobs. Like she just works everywhere. And Scott Pilgrim at the end, where he's seen her at like her 5th job, he's like, "How many jobs do you have?" Right? And she's like, "Don't worry about it," or whatever she says.
she's
So-
like,
Yeah.
it's called a job. Maybe if you had one, you would know.
yeah, exactly.
Great line.
Yeah, but that's like her thing. She works at the record store and she works at the theater, and like that's how she, they cleverly write her into the story. Is just being, working all these part-time jobs. But like you said, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of her as like the guide of the story.
Yeah, she pushes it forward. As much as Bill Hader coming in and giving Scott's inner monologue is hilarious, it's her that kind of drives the story forward.
Okay.
What was your favorite relationship? You had brought up Ellen Wong as Knives.
Yeah, I think as far as characters go, I think Knives probably is not going to get the credit she deserves for how interesting she is, because for so much of the story she's treated just as like Scott's high school girlfriend who everyone just kind of makes fun of him for dating, and she's like the fangirl who's just obsessed with him and his band, right? But by the end of the story she becomes this really interesting character where she actually helps Scott defeat Gideon after he's kind of apologized to her. Like she's following him the whole story, and she goes from super fangirl to actually he has to fix that relationship in order to better himself and defeat the final boss, so to say, right? So it's just a really interesting character to have around the whole time. Yeah. And her performance is fantastic as like the doe-eyed, obsessive little girl who then also is just a total badass when she needs to be and is fighting people, like Austin said, left and right, katanas flying and all that stuff. So as far as characters go, I think Knives Chow is certainly really interesting among, she gets lost probably among the bigger names in the story, right? I think the most interesting dynamic between characters is there's something about the end when Ramona reveals the chip in her head that Gideon is like controlling her, that is really interesting and kind of comes out of nowhere, but it adds this whole new dynamic and whole new layer to the story. And there's something there, and I don't know if it's her and Gideon's relationship specifically or Scott and Ramona with Gideon's like influence, but that's just, that whole thing is really interesting to me, that whole extra element that they added of like her being controlled by him, which you don't realize is the cause of all these evil X's throughout the whole movie, right? And it's kind of Gideon pulling the strings, like he's the one who sets the League of X's in motion or whatever. Well,
and Gideon is actually the first evil X introduced, but we don't know it yet. So the reason they go to that party is because G-Man, who is the big record executive, might be there.
Oh, and that's Gideon. Interesting. Yeah, I think like Gideon's influence over the story is probably the most interesting relationship, and specifically with Scott and Ramona. But
it's an not to get preachy, but it's an abusive relationship. Right. That's what it is. It's mental abuse Gideon has over Ramona that is shown physically through the chip, right? And again, that's that little touch of moral thing that comes with it, is that, somebody who's doing that to you does not have your best interests in heart and probably doesn't love you the way that somebody who just wants you to be yourself, right? Because that's what Scott says. She's like, "Oh, you want to go with me?" He's like, "Yeah, can I tag along?" That's what it is. You know what I mean? It's really an awesome little thing that, like, until you think about it or dive deeper on it, like we like to do on Thoughts from the Movies, you miss it. Yeah. I wonder if it's expanded in the comics. I bet it is.
I'm not sure, because I think, and again, I haven't read the comics, I've only read about the movie afterwards, but I believe that some of the Scott Pilgrim comics were written before the movie came out, but then some weren't, and they took certain things from the movie and later incorporated them into the comics, like certain lines of dialogue or things like that.
A la Game of Thrones.
So it would be interesting to see the timeline, sort of how the comics actually played out and where the movie fit into it.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else? We really broke this thing down pretty well without going through the plot, which I'm pretty pumped about.
Yeah. Honestly, we went through this pretty fast, but a lot of information with it. I want to point out how, like, great that some of these quick line giggled like a schoolgirl every time they said that his hair looked bushy, and then the next scene he had like a hat on. He's like, "Oh, what do you mean it does? What?"
Those like recurring gags. Yeah.
Yep.
Did anybody notice how many times they said "come" and "suck"?
No.
Oh, Josh, I don't think none of us did.
The band sucks. Band sucks. Scott sucks. Relationships suck. Girlfriends suck. Like everything sucks. And then somebody's always, I'd say like at least once a scene is like, "Are you gonna come?" Like it's in. Go back. Like it's.
I think this is just Josh's like own
no,
thought process, like injecting into the movie.
I'm gonna get a count.
Like,
and
Josh is projecting his own
I'm gonna sit there with like
into it.
The tracker and be like, yeah.
Yeah, now we see how you think about these movies. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go through our questions then. Favorite thing in the movie? Austin, go.
Action sequences, hands down, man.
Yeah.
Like you said, they still hold up today. The uniqueness of them, incorporating the different graphics. And you really didn't know what you were going to get into with this. You thought it was just like, unless you like have read the comics, of course, which I didn't, so I went into this blind. But I didn't picture like superhero fighting and all this like crazy fast stuff that was going to go on, and it blew my mind away for, especially like we said, for the year 2010. Like not a lot of great things came from it, and this was one of those great things.
Definitely.
Justin?
Sort of along those lines, I'll say the visuals and the use of the graphics and just the way they incorporated all of the visual elements together, whether it's Scott going into the bathroom and it shows the little pee bar, and then as he pees it just goes down, which is just such a funny and non-useful but awesome thing to have, or like I said, the name graphics of like Wallace 25 gay best friend loves all this cool stuff, or whatever. Just all the visual elements that they added to it.
And the callback to the P-Bar later when Knives shows up at the club that they're playing at, and it's like the thing goes above his head as to which excuse he's going to use.
Oh, yeah.
I need to pee on her. I mean...
Yeah. It's like she asks him, "What are you doing here?" And then there's this, it shows the wheel on his head, like what answer he should give, and it lands between...
Yeah,
gotta go, and I have to pee, and he goes, "I gotta pee on her." Like just so clever, So good. So yeah, all of that stuff makes it just that much more unique.
Yeah. My favorite thing is the ensemble in this movie. There's a character for everybody, and they all play their parts, even down to young Neil, then becoming just Neil. I mean, it's really I love the ensemble. A good ensemble movie or TV show really strikes me, and I love the ensemble of it. Mm-hmm. Least favorite thing? It's gonna be tough.
Yeah. I think for me I think at the ending it did start to get a little convoluted for me with like as I kind of said how much I enjoyed the introduction of the chip before. I do think that it got to a point where I was like at the end of the movie and I'm like ready for it to be over, and then they introduce this whole thing and I'm like, oh wait, what are we doing now again?
Yeah.
Like it's not just defeating the X's, it's like Scott grappling with his self-respect and Ramona trying to break the bonds of the chip that she has on her, and like there were a lot of things at the end that I'm like, oh wait, there's all this other stuff.
We talked about it in Ex Machina that they introduced the twist at a great point. There was the twist was like very Shyamalan-esque, but it's like, there's a chip, we're done. Like,
very very late, and I was just like, wait, what are we doing now? So, yeah,
Austin?
That was probably mine.
I'd have to agree with that. Honestly, there's nothing really else I could really say that was bad for me in this movie. So yeah, I think you had a definitive plot, and then we decided to go a little bit more into like the new age and everything with the chip, and I think it's represented well. Like say like for an abusive relationship and everything, how that's put in to manifest and essentially, like you said, put it in a physical sense. I think that caught a lot of people's eye. But then later on, we get all this other stuff, and I'm like thinking, okay, is he gonna do it yet? Like, is it, what? You know what I mean? Like, it becomes almost like tiresome after a while, I'll say.
Sure.
My least favorite thing is that they did not use the Anna Kendrick character enough. They use her a lot in the beginning, right? She's kind of like Scott's conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And then she doesn't show up again until the very end. She's kind of absent through the middle of it. She's like in the stands, maybe watching, or when Wallace steals her boyfriend.
Yeah.
But like, I think there's that character of the older sister who makes him feel like shit. I love that, and I wish that was involved a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's interesting. She did this movie. She's another one. We haven't really talked about Anna Kendrick, but she's had a very good career after this. And this
Huge
was
career
before Twilight came out. Mm-hmm. So. She committed to this movie before Twilight came out, but it came out around the same time. But obviously she's gone on all the Pitch Perfects and everything. So another person that's had a very big career after this movie.
Favorite character, or I'm sorry, favorite scene. Favorite scene.
It's hard to choose.
I'm gonna go with an odd one here because I don't think a lot of people are gonna say that it's their favorite, and I was. Probably in stitches. I had to pause the movie. I was in stitches for almost like a straight 10 minutes when this scene happened. And it's when Knives knocks at the door of their apartment. And immediately they were like, oh, hi, is he here? Goes crashing through the window. Yeah. And Wallace is like, I think he just left.
Yeah.
And he just goes and grabs the jacket.
Yeah, like in
scene.
Full view of Knives, right behind Kieran Culkin, like reaches through the window, grabs his jacket. Yeah, you just missed him.
we're all just trying to get out of those shitty situations, and this was just put into perspective where I'm getting out of there no matter what. Crashed through the window, grabbed the thing, and literally walks right behind her. You get like a glance of her eye, like, I was dying, dude.
Yeah. Very funny scene.
It's a great scene.
Yeah.
Justin?
I'm going to say the collective fight scenes numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
I think. I wasn't really into the dancing or the disco twins and the Gideon ones, which I felt were the Chinese twins or the Asian guys were just
they were kind of boring.
Yeah, they didn't say anything. They were just there, and then Gideon was too long and drawn out. So the fight sequences with how stylish and cool they were, the first 4 were very unique and fun, and I'd say all of them tie for first.
Yeah, my honorable mention is to the fight with Maya Witten in it, especially when it was like, I was a little bi-curious. Well, I'm a little bi-furious. Great line. But mine is when they're invited backstage to hang out with Todd and what is her name?
Envy.
Yeah. Todd and Envy. And there's just some amazing lines in this. It's Zoolander-esque.
Yeah.
Is really what it is. But Ramona, nice outfit. Affordable? And then she's like, you're incorrigible. And he's like, I don't know the meaning of the word. It's also that you punch the highlights out of her hair. There's just so many great one-liners, and they're just zinging back and forth. They don't wait for you to laugh.
Right.
It's boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And as I was making my favorite list, Zoolander just edged out Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Before we go on to the next one, you didn't think that the dueling DJs having this combine their strengths into 2 dragons and the band combining their sound into a giant monster and those things fighting was unique? I thought that was crazy.
Certainly unique, but that whole fight sequence just felt very rushed and unnecessary in terms of all the other ones. There was no connection to how were they even an ex of Ramona's? I don't remember.
We don't understand that she was dating both of them. That's funny.
I think one of the characters even asked, was it both at the same time or one then the other? And then they just were like, whatever, let's just do it. So it felt rushed and unnecessary to the plot, which is why. It was cool visually for sure. Their music became personified in these giant animals which fought. That was cool.
Patronus, if you will.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. Yeah. But to your point though about all the lines just kind of being rattled off and no one even stopping to be like, what?
Yeah.
That's great because that's how the whole movie was. Mm-hmm. Every single thing that happened, no matter how outrageous or out of left field it seemed, they just kept going with it. Like there would be this big battle in the middle of a rock concert, and then as soon as it's done, people just start milling about like nothing happened, and it's like totally.
I guess
okay.
Sex Bombs wins.
yeah, like everyone the whole movie is like these crazy things happen, and people just pick it up and are like, yeah, all right,
here we
that's
go.
it, and that's why it works so well, I think.
Yeah. Commit to the bit, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Favorite character.
Well, Brie Larson will always have my heart. If you're watching, Brie, I'm here.
If Brie Larson's watching this podcast, I'll shit.
I honestly think that I have to go with Knives Chow.
Yeah.
Like when I was talking it out before, I'm like, man, she is actually really fucking interesting. Even though I hadn't thought about it when I was watching it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and Ellen Wong is in Glow.
Okay.
Now.
Oh, you like that show?
I love Glow.
The female wrestling show, yeah.
Yep, and she is a scene stealer in that as well. She just comes in with a one-liner, and it is brilliant.
Nice. Yeah, as far as characters go, she's the most interesting because you don't suspect her of anything until she becomes super important at the end, which is cool.
Yeah. Austin?
I'm going to have to go with Ramona, man. I mean, the whole plot revolves around her, and we see how each of the 7 Evil X's, how that brought out a piece of herself, almost, and showed everyone else, like, what she was feeling at the time, or if it was just a little fling or whatever. I'd argue that she's my favorite character because she layers all the villains that Scott Pilgrim has to face. I think that's a huge important part to this film.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this about Ramona, and Josh, you can weigh in on this too. I mean, do you think that you said she was your favorite character, Austin, but do you guys think of her, are you sympathetic towards her? Do you think she's a good person or a bad person? She's really interesting because she first started dating Scott, and she's like real aloof and like doesn't give a shit, and he's like really pining after her, and she's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then all of a sudden, he's got to fight all of her exes, which she like barely mentions or like makes a big deal out of and just kind of expects Scott to do it or whatever. Like there's something about her that's kind of off-putting for a while until the very end when Gideon comes in and you're like, oh, she's a victim, I guess, but it's so late in the movie. I already had this idea of her being this sort of just like aloof, not bitchy, but like Scott was doing all this stuff for her and she barely even she didn't like ask him to, she didn't say he didn't have to. Like, just what did you guys think of her as a character besides being interesting? Like good, bad, shitty, you sympathize with her?
Austin?
I mean, I'd argue that it's a little of good and bad because you see those different sides of people through relationships. I'd argue that when you said about like not really knowing her and having to do all these things, I argue that's the point of the quest. You see in like a lot of things where video game characters and everything have to go off and do it. They don't know anything about, but they're destined for greatness, destined to claim the prize that they want. So they'll go through all those hoops of fire, if you will, to achieve that. Good and bad, yes. I would say more sympathetic, like you said at the end, because we find out that she's more of a victim in all of this, and it plays out well, honestly.
So I'm going to say my favorite character, and then I'm going to come right back to it because that's who I'm going to recast, and I'm going to tell you why. So my favorite character is Michael Cera's Scott Pilgrim.
Yep.
I cannot begin to describe my fanboy affection for Michael Cera. Michael Cera in every movie is my favorite character. And even in like End of the World when he's like a cocaine infused.
Yeah, his best role ever. Yeah.
Like it's
the cameo.
So good.
Sip time. Who wants to sip?
But Michael Cera in everything he does is bloody brilliant. And I know he plays a one-tone character. He's always the same character. But if you are good at it, fucking own it. And that kid owns it. I love it.
Yeah, he is fantastic.
So let me recast my one character, and I am going to recast Ramona.
Okay.
I think this is very similar to Ex Machina. When I saw this when I was 20, you and I, Justin, were smack dab in the middle of that age range of those actors. I think the youngest was Aubrey at 18, and the oldest was probably like Bill Hader, right? Who's not much older. But I remember thinking that she was really pretty at 20 and like that she was hot and I was like, yeah, okay, I'd fight for her. And now as I've gotten older, I'm like, yeah, she just falls flat. And I wonder how much of it is the acting performance, because if you remember, there is a scene where it's after he beats Roxy that they kind of go back and forth. He's like feeling bad for himself, right? And she's like, look, I didn't ask you to do this. And, you know, she like hands him the list of the exes, like as a sarcastic comeback. And that should be a really powerful scene. But I feel like Ramona doesn't deliver on her end of it and it falls flat. It's also sad because Michael Cera had 2 badass leading ladies next to him in some of his other movies. Actually 3, right? Because Emma Stone's in Superbad, even though she's with Jonah Hill's character.
Right.
You have Ellen Page in Juno.
Sure.
Probably the strongest of the 3. And then Kat Dennings in Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. And they are, all 3 of them are beautiful and charming, and you fall in love with them throughout the movie. And I think that character needs recast, and I'd like to recast her with Alison Brie.
Alison Brie.
She's the perfect age.
You're just thinking about Glow now.
Well, I mean, you can ask my wife. I am a diehard Alison Brie fan.
Yeah.
Community, she's the only redeemable character not named Donald Glover to me. She's amazing in Mad Men. She's amazing in Glow. She's amazing in all the movies she does. And she would be that perfect age. She slots right in there as being a little bit older than Scott Pilgrim, but still would be just awesome. Awesome. And she has such a great ability to play the wide-eyed doe face, like, oh, this is happening to me, and then turn on a dime and become vicious. And I think that would have helped a lot in the very key scene that kind of went flat.
Okay. Austin?
Okay, interesting take here. I'm going to replace Gideon's actor.
Okay.
Jason Schwartzman.
Thank you. I'm going to replace him with Josh Hutcherson.
From the Hunger Games.
Correct. Yes.
Oh!
The little dude.
Wait, which one?
The short guy.
Pita?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Pita.
Pita?
Yeah. Think about this. Okay, a lot of video games and everything that you play, maybe I'm just going in from a video game aspect.
Sure.
But a lot of the times, I'll use Crash Bandicoot as an example.
Okay. I cannot wait to see you tie this one together.
Okay. So, most of the villains that Crash faces are very formidable in size and power and strength, whereas the villain, Cortex, is more intelligent and more, like, small and very, like, almost conflict with himself. I can see Josh Hutcherson playing the shit out of Gideon in this.
Okay.
Honestly, like, if they even gave him, like, one of those, like, Ready Player One, like, visors, I feel like would be so cool.
Interesting.
I don't know. What do you guys feel? Like,
I buy it.
I went down the rabbit hole of video games for this one.
I mean, I like him as Pita in Hunger Games. I've never seen him in anything else, at least that I know of.
He did that. He did a show, Future Man.
I didn't see
right,
it.
yeah, with,
on Amazon or Hulu or
Seth
something.
Seth Rogen was in that, right?
What's that?
Seth Rogen was in that, right?
He was a producer of it, yeah.
And that's really what this show is missing.
Yeah.
Or this movie's missing is Seth Rogen.
Oh, man. If Seth
Just
Rogen
like-
was in it.
Just like if he was in the band or something, that shitty laugh. Like,
Yeah. Any of the side characters.
Would've been
That'd
great.
be fantastic.
Yeah. Who are you recasting?
I'm going to recast the vegan guy, number 3, Brandon Routh,
Yeah.
who I would have liked to seen as a bigger celebrity in that idiot role, and I think it would have been funnier. I'm going to recast him with Chris Hemsworth, who does comedy so well. Like, have you ever seen him in Ghostbusters as, like, the idiot receptionist in the new
so
one?
good.
It was so funny. You're like, this big, hulking, strapping, good-looking guy is so good at playing
so
an
good.
idiot. So I would have liked to have seen... This was, I think, before Thor.
Yeah.
But if he had those chops at the time, I think he would have been very funny.
John Hamm also, as a really good-looking, great guy. Like, you know, should
Plays
be
a
the hero.
funny idiot.
Plays an idiot so well.
Yeah. Plus, Chris also ties more of the MCU into this movie. So.
Yeah, you gotta...
Robert Downey Jr. plays,
Yes.
villain number 7 now. Or
Yeah.
whatever. Get them all in there.
Well, you know, James Franco would be a Gideon replacement, but that's a like for like. I like Austin's take where he goes totally away from that, but like James Franco as Gideon works too. All right. So Austin, I did a thing.
Well, we got to do the scores.
That's what I'm getting to.
I thought you were going to tell them the next movie.
No. Austin, I looked up everybody's scores.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Okay? So your highest rated movie... wait, I gotta find you. Aha, there you are. Is Goodfellas at a 9.6. Your lowest rated movie is... your own... No, I'm sorry. The Good, the Bad, the Ugly at 4.2.
Okay.
Which, that was the highest score on The Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
It was. Yeah.
What can I say?
And this is our 12th movie now.
Yeah, this is our 12th movie, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So, Austin, 1 through 10.
Man. Holy crap, this stuff. I hate going first for these things. I know you guys purposely put me here. So
Lead off hitter, baby.
I can change things.
I'll go first. How about that?
Yeah, and then I'll go second, so Austin, you can have a minute.
I'll go
Okay,
first.
all right.
All right. So my highest rated movie is 9.1. That's Goodfellas. My lowest rated movie is The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, 3.2. But I only have 2 movies that are above, or 3 movies that are above an 8. Ex Machina, The Social Network, and The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Or not The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Goodfellas.
Yeah.
This one for me is one of my all-time favorites. It's in my, as I'm building this list, I'm going to show Justin can see, is, well past 50 movies at this point. But it's definitely my top 50. It's going to get a 9.5 from me.
9.5, interesting. What keeps it from being a 10 for you?
The Lion King is a 10. Rear Window's a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Reservoir Dogs is a 10.
The
That's
Departed is a 10.
What?
The Departed is a 10.
The Departed's not even in the top
It's an
10
11.
list.
It's an 11.
Believe it or not.
Not even on the list?
It's not. It's in the list, but it's not. The top 10 as it sits right now is Lion King, Reservoir Dogs, Pirate Radio, P.S. I Love You, Rear Window, Toy Story, Remember the Titans, Jurassic Park, Billy Madison, The Dark Knight.
That is a hell of a list there.
Yeah, I will say that's a lot.
So this is, even though it's one of your favorite movies of all time, it's just not quite at the peak performance level of some of those others.
Right.
Slightly
it's
under.
just slightly underneath it. So that's why it's going to sit at a 9.5.
Well, I'm the only one so far who's given a perfect rating. I gave
Correct.
a 10 to The Social Network.
Yes.
A perfect 10.
A perfect 10.
Perfect 10.
10.
It's perfect in every way, and you'll come around to it by the time I die. But I'm giving Scott Pilgrim an 8.5. I usually don't do halves, but I think it's so unique and stylish, and it's actually a really good story. Not a perfect, brilliant story, but very interesting and different, and because of all the elements involved, all the cast and all the creativity they used in creating it, there's just so many cool things about it that are really well done. So, yeah, very, very excellent 8.5.
I think your number rankings, just going off of what I'm looking at, probably have the most guidance to them. Austin and mine's are kind of like, I really like this movie, I hated this movie. Where yours is like Social Network's a 10, Ex Machina's a 9, Mystic River, Goodfellas are both 8s, Tootsie was a 7. The Matrix was a 7. Yeah,
the majority of mine, it looks like, are 7 or higher.
Right, except for Evil Dead and The Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
Yeah.
What is your unofficial Space Jam score? That's the only one that's missing.
Space Jam's a classic. I think that'd be over 7 for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's the point of doing these, is they are, most of them are either classics or, culturally significant in some way, right? So, but
so there you go, Austin. You
Yeah.
can give it a 10 if you want.
Austin's numbers are pretty high.
I would say so. Yeah, I'm very, like we said, I'm very generous with the number.
Yeah, you have a lot of 8s and above.
Yeah.
Except for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which, for whatever reason, nobody liked.
Nobody liked that movie.
Tarantino likes it, and that should be good enough for us. But it wasn't.
I'm gonna do this a solid, and we're gonna go above an 8 again. I'm gonna split you guys. I'm gonna go with a 9.
8.9?
No, a 9.
9 even.
Oh, a 9 even.
9.0,
Okay.
I guess.
All right. Yeah, I like that.
Love that. I love when we have someone who goes in completely blind and then comes out and gives it a high rating.
Yeah.
Like you did with Ex Machina and like Dawson did this week. I like that. That makes me happy.
And it does make it... Actually, I think the highest rated movie out on our list right now is Ex Machina with a 9 from Justin, a 9.3 from you, and an 8.7 from me. That even beats Social Network.
Not on average.
Not on average? Yeah, on average.
27 divided by 3, and that's 26 divided... 27. Yeah, they're about even.
Yeah, they're close. And Scott Pilgrim probably
For some reason,
coming
Tootsie's
in at
not in there. I don't know why we're not talking more about that. But,
It was such a fun movie, but that was about the end of it.
Dorothy Mantooth. She's amazing. No, that's Dorothy Mantooth is from Anchorman.
Yeah.
And she's a saint. Dorothy Mantooth is a saint. Yeah. Dorothy Michaels is who we're talking about.
So, Austin, next week, we are going to have on somebody that was actually on the Space Jam episode and is a regular on Thoughts from the Bench contact. Zach, Yinzer Mob Zach, is going to join us, and he got to pick the movie. So are you ready for this?
Strap me in. I'm ready.
It's an Adam Sandler movie.
Oh. Is it?
Uncut Gems.
Boom! Dude, didn't I predict that before the show?
it.
I said Josh's next
called it.
movie is going to be Uncut Gems, and Austin's like, I think that's going to be it too. So you didn't pick it, but your buddy did, and that counts as a win for the both of us.
Yeah,
so, excellent prediction.
It would have
Austin.
been my pick had it not been.
I knew it was, man. I knew it was coming.
You know,
So.
the Sandman at his finest. So we'll do that next week, and Zach will be along for the ride. So we'll see you next week on Thoughts from the Movies.
See you, everybody.
Take it easy, guys.